Nice. Bruce, Ruth, here, Paul, and myself.
Yay.
And Eric. And the first order of business is approval of the June 13th minutes. We can't believe it's been almost a whole month.
Yeah,
Yikes.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Correspondence or member updates. Paul, do you want to say anything about your email to the select board and whether you've gotten any response?
Sure. I think I was pretty clear, and I can go all on the record that I had no conversation with anybody. This was simply as a resident.
Has nothing to do with our board, with our
No.
committee.
No, I just decided to do it.
Yeah.
I happened upon this old yellow memo by accident.
Does that mean you're cleaning out your basement?
No, I was actually looking for a manual for my air compressor because I didn't know what weight oil I wanted to change the oil.
All comes together.
Google it.
Make sure you put that in the minutes.
Yeah, Google it.
So I was looking, that's exactly what I was doing, looking for this manual, and I don't know why. Fate, or whatever you want to call it.
Did you find the manual?
I did.
Good.
It was with these papers, so I was in the right box.
Funny. That's funny.
Guess who walked in the door? I'm very sorry to be disjointed, but
Yeah.
Aaron usually
Who's
has.
joined us, please, other than Mark? And I think Karen is also, but
Carlin. Carolyn Reese, Mark Howell, but we heard a doorbell. We just can't see a face.
Ruth, it was Terry Ackerman.
Thank
Hi.
you.
Welcome.
All right.
We're just talking about updates. And then, so have you got acknowledgement of it or?
The only person I have heard from is Ned Perry.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the only person I've
Who
actually
you
heard from.
referred to in the letter?
Yes, yes,
Because I would assume you probably copied him on
I
it.
did. I
Okay.
did. It moved me to send it as just an example of the way I feel things used to work.
Right.
And how to get
And-
them to work better today?
Well, that was the point of the memo.
Yeah.
Really?
You didn't catch that.
I didn't figure that out. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So in terms of other updates, both Ruth and I reached out to the town manager to talk about a public hearing and what's going to be involved in that. And anticipating that, after we meet with the personnel board, we will have a meeting with open to the public. And a couple of suggestions of meeting places have already been recommended. One is at the library, one is at CMLP. And looking into those. And then at some point,
Thank you.
if anybody has some strong opinions about what time of day, I think we're going to try and do it a hybrid. And what will determine that will obviously be both meeting room and whatever else has to go into it.
I think we also have to have a look at how far out in the future it's likely so that we know what reservation can be made.
Yeah.
I also, okay, somebody else keep looking up, would you? Because I can't catch it.
Who is it?
Ned Perry just came.
Ned's here,
Hi, Ned.
and then we got somebody.
Hi.
Oh, Anita!
Anita Tech, yes.
Thank you.
We're not seeing everybody as they come in.
Probably by design.
Yeah.
And it would be
Well,
good to
Aaron
know
always
who's
sits in.
attending.
Yeah, Erin always sets up the.
I know, she did.
That's Mr.
That's
Perry.
Ned.
Hi, Ned.
Hi. So I like the idea that we're already talking about our meeting because we have to talk about our public hearing before we can do our recommendations, but the recommendations have to be in
Ready to
hand.
go.
Yeah, otherwise we have nothing to report, right?
Mhm.
So I see it working as we report our recommendations, we take input from.
The personnel board.
No, I'm thinking,
Oh, you're talking about public meeting now.
public
Okay,
meeting,
you've already moved
employee
on,
meeting, I want to hear from, those folks.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then we can sign our names on the report to say, okay, this is what we heard.
Yeah.
No public comment or lots of public comment, and then go to the selectmen. So we need to know, as Anna has been working since January, if the selectmen meeting is X, which we have to hear from Matt Johnson when we can get on his schedule.
Yeah.
Then back up to review of public hearing, and I'm also, Ann is pretty clear, she likes the idea of one public hearing.
Mhm.
I'd like to have an opportunity for employees
Well,
to participate without having to come back at night.
why don't we package it all together? Do one meeting, get the employees there and everybody.
That's good. Are you a taxpayer? The problem
Yes.
is, do we want all of those employees to have to come back at night on their nickel?
Well, we do 7 o'clock in the morning when they start work.
Opinions? Anybody?
I think, well, I do think it should be during the work day.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more waste going on than just coming to a public hearing, but I shouldn't say that.
And you had mentioned, and I thought it was fine, but I'm neutral on certainly on the time, but, 11 to 1 or something,
Yeah.
so that it's a combination lunch hour. And
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken, the format was going to be informal.
Yes,
And maybe we have some easels set up and people can ask questions, and I think that works great.
and it takes, maybe the equivalent of a coffee break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With,
Yeah.
drive time on either side of it, but.
and again, people don't have to be there physically. They could be there like this.
Sure.
And they don't have to be there for the duration.
Right.
They just could drop by, say,
It's the reason I thought CMLP was a good idea, because, and I'm sure they could set something like this up at CMLP. I mean,
Yeah.
we have the technology, it's just it's a port you plug into.
Yeah.
There's good parking.
Parking,
There's
yeah.
just
good parking.
there's parking. So,
That's the one drawback about the library. I was hoping we might be able to use the new room that's right off the children's library. But,
Parking lot across the street is usually
But
full.
it's full, yeah.
yeah, and especially in the middle of the day.
I just saw the garage. You spill a coffee?
Good.
Okay.
I second, let's do it.
Okay.
But we
So-
have to know where we are in the calendar. When I call them back and say, okay, town manager said we could do it. You said the rooms are available. You've asked us for when, and now I'm ready to tell them when. Sometime in August is as close as I can
Yeah.
get.
Last week of August?
22nd.
If we do the last week, then we have no time to have the public hearing for,
This is the public hearing we're talking about.
Do them all together.
you want to do,
Why not?
We're doing one public hearing, right?
Well,
yeah, I was thinking of this, the employee meeting as sort of a dry run.
No, that's,
That's all.
no, employees' public hearing.
Okay, so then we have to handle it.
when we were doing something, we were trying to do the select board before September 6th, I thought. but
Yeah, we were.
Hoping to be on the September 6th.
I'll be gone.
Agenda.
I'll be gone the 6th
Oh.
till the 26th.
Is Terry Ackerman still there? Hello, hello. No, there she is.
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
know, off the top of your head, do you know your September calendar for the select board?
Yes, I do. It
Yeah.
is, Labor Day is September 5th, so we're not meeting that day. We are meeting the 12th and the 19th.
Thank you.
About August.
And we're meeting August 29th.
Okay, that's very helpful. So we have sort of a picture of
What other meetings in September? 12th and
12 and
19th?
19.
Okay.
So we're scheduled right now to meet with the personnel board 25, right?
July, yeah.
7/25.
Yep,
We have nothing scheduled for August, but we're going to need it.
yeah,
Yep.
and that's gonna be the public hearing, hopefully.
Well, what we have is not 7 pages, so we still have to.
We have-
Yes,
we have
to
to
get
work
it
it.
down.
yes, but see, I'm imagining that the personnel board will have some comments. We'll have to revise again after the personnel board meeting. So we'll do the personnel board, then we'll do the public, and then we'll do with the selectmen.
Yes, I see that. But I
what-
don't
That's
see
July,
what,
August, September, right there, right.
But-
but what
The
are, what are we going?
the personnel board is gonna want us to revise our report.
We
Well,
haven't written it yet,
they may have input.
but it's input on something they haven't seen,
Clarification.
right? They haven't seen anything yet. This is
Well,
next week.
we're gonna send them a packet, I would assume. To me, it is almost the final draft. That's why we're having this 2-hour meeting.
Well, here we are at correspondence and member updates. Next is discussion on our recommendation.
Right.
So now we have to go into the packet that we have of documents and start to wordsmith.
And the other thing that wordsmithing and also deciding which of the things ought to be attachments and which things can be referred to as being on the website.
Right.
So, oh,
If you don't mind, I can start this ball rolling because I think I should stand somewhere where Ann won't throw things at me.
I'll get under the
Maybe I'll
table.
get under
I'll get under the table so I don't get hit.
If we, looking at last meeting, my assignment was to do the Vulcan mind meld of the, some of the things I had,
I already did that. I already sent you that. I was waiting for you to get back to me. about it.
well, I didn't want to respond to it because I thought that would get shaky as far as the open meeting law.
No, okay.
But what I took poetic license here, and this is for everybody's,
That's fine.
have a sense of humor.
We will.
Just,
The problem is we don't have copies of it.
we do, I have one for
You're a
everybody.
saint.
Okay.
but just in terms of just a 30-second explanation. My life has been in the police world as far as all of my writing, all of my documents and everything. So I'm very blunt, very not wordy.
That's
And,
fine.
and
I
straight,
like it.
and straight up. So, so some people may not particularly get into how I did things, but what I did was, I thought it best in the end, this is just my opinion now.
Can I have a copy?
I just thought it
So
was,
nobody has a copy of what I wrote.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's in the
yeah.
packet.
Okay.
yeah, no,
Right.
yes,
If
I used
I selected the right one,
no, I used all of
Okay.
that.
thank you.
I don't remember seeing. it.
Summary of findings and recommendations. Draft. 5/23/22, that's the one.
5/23, right? Was that the last
Yeah.
one?
No. It's not.
See,
I
that's
wrote
why,
one in June.
see, that's why I was,
After Paul wrote his thing, I took his
Yes, you did,
and
which
mine and I
is-
noted
yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes, you
Okay.
did. That was the, yes, and I have that.
Which one is it?
All right, so
It's-
go ahead.
5/23? No, what date is it, Paul?
hold on.
Did it come from
I have-
Aaron or who did it come from?
I copied it from Ann.
So I have 5/23, 5/12, May 3, May 18. See, what I'm saying is I didn't know which one to include. June 28. Our process of summer or summary,
Yeah,
June 28.
I have one without a date on it.
Yeah, right here. Stop.
Okay,
whatever.
All right.
Let's deal with the newest one.
So what I did, just so, is I took all of our stuff
Mm-hmm.
and after thinking it through and going back and forth between, kind of the spreadsheet format or whatever it's called, of recommendations, what is now and what's being proposed and that format. I did it the way my brain works, and that is I copied the bylaw
Okay,
and I took, this is the, not the first few pages, et cetera, but this is a copy of the current, the
2017.
2017. Anywhere you see italicized, bolded text is where I put in the things that we have collected and we're going to, and again, this is in my wording.
Okay.
So I felt it was a good way for, if we hand this to somebody who has never read the personnel bylaws before, and we start doing a sort of an analysis of a dissection of this section to this section, I know I would get lost in about 5 minutes. So what I thought for your enjoyment here is I
You melded.
I melded.
Yeah.
So if I can ask for clarification, so if I'm looking at yours, section 1, section 2, section 3, and then on the second page, you've bolded what came out of that as far as the committee.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
then we go on to 4 and 5,
Yeah.
and
So anything that I didn't touch, and there
is-
isn't something it's just, we left alone when we went through
Yeah.
the personnel
It's
bylaw.
current. Well, it exists on paper, whether it's implemented or not remains to be seen.
Whatever I bolded up and italicized, it's for the preceding section.
Okay, got it.
So,
Thank you.
So this is, hopefully, is our melding,
Mhm.
and it's clear, straightforward. And is our recommendations for those sections. What I'm suggesting is in the conclusion section, that's where we can take input from the public hearings. I think these are mechanical things that we discussed that we wanted changed. I think the conclusion can be, we can add to
Okay,
as we go along.
but the conclusion is not going to come out of left field someplace.
No, I'm
It's built.
gonna offer to write it
Nice, nice.
and get it out to people.
Okay, but it's all going to have stuff that we've already pondered.
So
Absolutely.
is that okay with you, Bruce? Because you
Yes.
had said you were gonna do the
We'll
conclusion.
do it together.
You're doing some thinking over here. Okay.
I'm thinking. We'll do the conclusion together.
Yeah. Right.
Good.
Does anybody, and they're just drafts.
So what I
So
need
what
to
is this-
know.
What is this going to look, I mean, how? I'm still not clear as to how this is going to get used.
I think it's the meat of the final report.
Okay, what's going to go with it?
The,
Is it referring to the attachments in here?
no,
Okay, so
No.
that we need to do.
yes.
Okay,
I've left this just strictly, it is what it is.
Okay.
It's our stuff that we came up with for all of these sections of the bylaw. I don't have anything in here about the personnel policies, what Ruth worked on. I think that's an attachment.
Yeah,
yep,
I think the Ned Perry letter is an attachment. And I think the Anita Techley analysis of the, and I think, in my opinion, we reference all of those in the conclusion.
and do you make them attachments or do you refer to them as part of the website?
I think there should be attachments myself.
Yeah, I do too, because nobody's gonna read,
Just that.
Okay.
nobody's gonna read the website. If you put it all in there, it's never gonna get read.
Yeah.
website is hard.
um,
But those attachments are the appendix.
Right.
To the report.
So there's nothing about methodology, nothing about the philosophical a bigger picture.
From my personal standpoint, and that's where I didn't want to get things thrown at me. I just,
My personal opinion is, we have people here that have been unable to read a job description, unable to follow it, and they need to learn to follow it really quickly. And, you know, any other thing that gets them off course. I mean, they haven't done their job for 20 years.
Okay,
That's my view. Maybe that's too harsh, but hasn't been done for 20 years.
you're not bringing anybody along that's just new to the picture. That's the problem. They're gonna have a hard time recognizing historically what has been done and the significance for bringing it back.
what I did, and I don't, I'll,
That's what I'm worried about.
Well, the
I'll get my
significance of
hand
bringing
on
it is
is I
follow
took
what you're
Ann's
supposed to do.
piece,
Mhm.
and I have it,
Which dates?
the latest thing with methodology and,
I have one without a date.
um,
I have
I
this.
kept your introduction, which you did the whole, you worked our two things together.
Right.
And I kept,
Now, where's that? I have May 18, May 23.
hold on.
Yeah, all I have here is the bylaws.
So is it, so what is this is we keep the introduction?
This is, yes,
Oh, okay.
here's, this is the document we were just talking about. Ann's latest, the meld. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, I never got that.
Okay.
June 28th.
I just printed it out. I don't know what date.
No,
Yes, it's the latest one, I believe.
Does it start with,
No, it starts,
that's what I'm just nuts about, trying to figure out which version we're using.
That's what I'm struggling with too.
Okay. I appreciate you having done all of this. I'm
Me
looking
too.
forward to it. But I want to know, is there room for anything beyond the bylaws to be referenced? Or
absolutely. This was just, I just took
this
the,
is the guts,
this is just the guts.
Yep.
And
and we're gonna, beginning and end, we're going, okay.
yes.
Because I feel the need to say something, for instance, this all started 2 years ago at town meeting when the question was, let's not specifically dissolve the personnel board, but let's take a different step. And I believe our conclusion is going to include keep the personnel board, strengthen the
Yeah.
personnel board. And it doesn't say that in the bylaws necessarily. So we
Right.
need,
Oh, no.
some way on either side of the guts
Right.
Yes.
to say that.
That's what I'm just, I wanted to do the middle where we
Okay.
took what I knew we had decided upon. And, I put it in my own words and used your document and,
Mhm.
Is that your most recent one?
Starts with introduction.
so it's just like this introduction.
Really, really. June 28.
This, just as a side note and reflection, this being my first committee or task force, or whatever we're gonna call it, it's a pain not being able to communicate. Because
Open
you,
meeting law, rats.
I know, so,
Especially when you get to this level.
yes.
Yeah.
What I did was, this is what this
See,
is,
I'm not seeing that in here.
I don't,
Well, but the thing is,
It doesn't matter.
that's
wrote it.
not,
Yeah.
you wrote it,
I
but
know.
she has written so many.
Right.
And when I tried to put the most recent one in the packet, I've gone awry, obviously.
So what I did was, this is yours.
Yeah.
This is when you took my piece
Right.
together and put your, this is
Mhm.
your piece, this is
Yeah.
my piece. I didn't think,
We're gonna get rid of the discussion.
yeah, and the methodology, it is what it is.
I think it's
And-
important because it's talking about just not navel gazing.
Right, whatever people decide, you know, I
Yeah.
just, this is what I,
Yeah,
and then on the summary of findings and recommendations, I just said rework and stronger
right.
on the
Yeah,
close.
yeah, right.
It's gonna have all the other stuff.
That's fine. That's good.
Okay, so. That's a meeting.
So shall we agree at least that we're gonna keep methodology and
Can I peek at that, Paul?
introduction and a charge as the first three things?
Yes,
Good.
I think that's,
That's a good start.
in my opinion. I think I have 2 copies of that, Bruce, so you might be able to have that one.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
But we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
saying that none of those things need to be reviewed, wordsmithed, reordered.
I don't think so, but, you know, yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay. So when we leave, could I have a copy, or you can email me through Aaron for the second copy?
Of what I just,
Yeah, your work?
I don't have it yet.
what did I just have?
You didn't hand me anything. You showed it to me.
Oh, I thought he did.
That's fine,
No.
which is fine.
You may have given it to me.
No, I did give it to you.
Okay. All right, so I'm looking at guts that begin section 1, purpose and application.
All right, we're down.
Should we step through this?
Yes,
Why not?
because it sounds like that comes next anyway.
Yeah.
So really all we have to do is look at the second page highlighted section at the top, which comes as comments regarding what came right
Sections
before it.
one,
Yes,
two,
section,
and three.
section, no,
Section
just section 3.
Oh,
I propose to just leave,
okay, so that leaves,
So section 3 is personnel policies and procedures. And the comment that is added is there is significant evidence that employees have not been notified. They have an opportunity under this section to review and comment on proposed personnel policy changes that could have a significant impact on their conditions of employment. Any proposed change shall be communicated to employees prior to discussion or implementation by the personnel board. And the opportunity to comment will be communicated and offered before any action is taken. Now, this is where you have a sample
this is Form
Checklist.
5.
checklist.
I refer to that multiple times. Maybe I should have referred to it here.
Yeah, I would start where it first shows up as something you want to look at.
Because I think,
Well, I refer to it, the checklist should be part of the report, I believe.
mhm,
Okay,
The checklist, and when we get to it, I have a comment about I think that Bruce's part of the org chart is huge,
yeah,
but we're not there.
no,
It doesn't give the information.
right,
But it also needs to be maintained by management or human resources, not the personnel board.
Correct.
They need
That's
to
just a
look at it,
resource for them.
But they need to
yeah.
keep it up to
So,
date. 'cause it
yes.
goes
in
out
section
there.
3, our recommendation is that section 3 should be implemented as current.
I would say this wording whoever wordsmiths this up, I'm not sure who's gonna write the final bylaws. I don't think we
Yeah,
ever
it's not
really,
at this table.
it's not this table. I think they need to, you can take out the significant evidence, but if I was writing this, I would say any proposed change shall be communicated to employees prior to, I think it's self-evident. What should be added
Should be.
to that section.
Okay, that's good for me.
Do you think I should add the checklist to?
Well, I'm writing it in here as referred to the checklist.
Perfect. Okay, I can add right that.
So the checklist is not
And it's
class
gonna
and
be in-
comp limited.
We call it Appendix 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long list, so.
And I do, I think on all the other ones, Dan, or almost all of them,
Okay.
refer to the checklist.
Yeah, oh yeah, I see it. So then on the next page, after section 5.1,
Mhm.
there does not appear to be consistent application of changes made to the classifications being made that must be approved by town meeting. The proposed checklist shall be completed when there are many changes made pursuant to this section.
Mhm.
And again, that's going to be an appendix.
Right.
And then after 5.2, job descriptions,
Mhm.
there is evidence that job descriptions are not kept up to date. There's anecdotal evidence received from current employees that disagreements regarding their job descriptions were not addressed by the HR department. Job descriptions should be brought up to date during the classification and compensation review this year.
Mhm.
And we're not losing the language that's currently in the bylaw that this has to happen on a regular, recurring basis.
Correct.
So this, yeah, this is good.
Are you suggesting that maybe we ought to have something about which should be being reviewed every year?
Must-
Or being reviewed every, because that's part of the problem.
The part of the problem is
And,
it's perfectly great language. It's not
Not,
implemented.
but it's not. What do I want to say? It could be expanded.
Oh, yeah.
To say,
Mhm.
that it should be done according to the bylaw.
It's supposed to be done.
Yeah,
Right.
Change should be, there must be.
We're talking about the job description one. Yes.
4.6. Each year. It's just shocking. They have this org chart. Nobody knows where it is.
okay, next page. The section, this is after
Right,
5.2.
5.2 job descriptions.
That's what we were in.
Yeah.
Okay.
5.
This is 5.3. After
Three.
that.
Yep.
Should be adhered to as written, and the personnel board shall be given documentation of any proposals under this section prior to meeting that will be addressing the proposals.
Strong. We need that.
Yeah.
And it has to be of record and remain.
That's what we had
On the
decided
website.
all this stuff. I
Yes.
just put it into a place.
I commend you. This is excellent.
Okay, and then after 6.2,
6.2.
which is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it out loud. so
Amendments
that-
to the compensation
Yeah.
plan.
This says the application of this section appears to be inconsistent. It is very clear that some actions under this section must be approved by town meeting. In fact, there are amendments to the compensation schedules currently before the personnel board that were submitted by the human resource director June 2022, which is well after town meeting, which appears to be a violation of the bylaw. This section shall be adhered to, and the proposed checklist,
Mhm.
once again,
Appendix.
shall be used when appropriate. And as a guide.
Appropriate and as a guide.
Because that's really what it is.
Mhm.
And after 6.3, periodic review of the compensation plan. There's no recent evidence that there has been a periodic review of the compensation plan. Other than,
The mechanical and periodical across the board pay raises.
right, which is different.
Yes.
Which is.
The last classification and compensation review was done for at least 14 years ago. The criteria for what the personnel board should take into account should be revisited and brought up to date.
That's all that funny stuff that's in there that,
Okay, so we hit 7.
I have one question. How much in terms of pool of money, how do they determine the pay raises and how do they figure out the pool of money? Is that approved at town meeting?
I don't know that the pay raises are, no.
I asked, I reached out, I think we brought it, we touched on that briefly before, a few meetings ago. I reported that I reached out to John Harris and asked him the process.
Yeah.
And the FinCom, you know, in conjunction with the CFO and then the FinCom comes up with a pool of dollars that goes for salaries, and then it's up to the town.
Okay,
Of how
and they're
this-
still following that process? Where the
Yes.
FinCom approves it, okay.
The bottom line, the number.
Yep.
Is what they have, and that's not changed.
Okay,
How it's awarded,
distributed it.
Distributed, yes.
distributed is not as you would usually think. Everybody gets it according to their compensation, their
According to their pay raise.
Frankly, that's not, and that has been discussed here before, that's one of the main, you know, we have all spoken to a lot of employees, and that's up there with health insurance as far as, frankly, if an SMT member got a 9% raise and I got 1, how is that
how is that figured?
How is that figured?
How is that
And I
equitable?
believe, and I'm hopeful that in all of this, and when we get to the conclusion, as we have discussed, that there's more outreach done when all this is being figured out.
Yeah.
By the personnel board and HR and the town and,
Yeah.
so there's some justification. So we're not asking that question. An employee could be asking that question
Mhm.
and say,
Fair
you know, I've seen that X person has
X%.
got $14,000 worth of pay raises in the last 3 years. And that's an accurate, that's actually,
Nice
that's
round number, Paul.
that's actually an actual. I can prove that,
Mhm.
but that's an X percentage of that person's, but the masses got this. That's a major stumbling block and
Probably contributes to why people are leaving.
Yep.
no,
Can't treat people that way. You can treat people that way.
Okay,
so
so let's go on to classification, reclassification under 10.4.
Wait a minute.
How about
Are you
hours?
going to say anything about 7, 8, 9, 1, 9, 2?
7, we decided to delete.
Hmm.
So that's why I put a line through
Yeah,
it.
so we're just not gonna refer to it. We've talked about it.
We're gonna
deleting-
recommend it be deleted.
Okay, so we'll skip ahead to 10.
Yes. Which I didn't see any issues with.
Reclassification,
Yes, that's,
okay,
under, I thought 10.3 was fine. We had decided 10.3 was okay. 10.4 reclassifications, that's where I have my next comment.
okay, I'm with you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
From the analysis and anecdotal evidence received by this task force, number 2 of this section appears to have been abused and manipulated in multiple instances. The personnel board only has what they are given to make decisions. There is evidence the personnel board was not made aware that there was an actual employee working in a grade when the position was changed to a lower classification. The ability to move to a lower classification is predicated clearly in the bylaw that the employee's current salary will not change until a maximum is reached within the guidelines of the section. The recommendation is that the proposed checklist be used when any modifications are made to a classification to ensure a current employee is not adversely affected by not following the requirements of the change. It is highly recommended that the personnel board pay close attention to these requirements when any issues under the section are proposed. It is imperative that any affected current employee be moved, being moved under this section, be notified and have the opportunity to address the Human Resources Department and most importantly, the Personnel Board.
It's meaty,
That would seem to
but it
make
has to
sense.
happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried to make this.
We've been there.
Yes, yes.
How do
On
they,
multiple occasions.
how do they change classifications without getting it approved? They just do it.
Well, you can do it before the Personnel Board.
But if
And
it-
generally,
And it's only good for the rest of that year until town meeting then approves it.
you can move someone down in the classification rate without town meeting. But that kicks in this whole thing about their won't change
Mhm.
until they reach the maximum of their
The
original
new.
pay grade. Yeah,
Yes.
right. So
It's
We-
the difference between people understanding classification and pay.
What we don't have an opportunity to say in the bylaw currently or in this proposal, that the implications are not limited to an employee or one personnel board vote. There are implications throughout the whole town. So is there a way, is there something that we need to say and make the finance department aware somehow of your thinking? Because, you know, just, it's not just
It's
numbers.
a relationship between the different.
It's relationships,
Yeah.
it's long-term effect, you know, there's so many issues. I know you're very fond of indicating that we should have some HR expertise on this committee, not this committee, but the personnel board. But I think in addition to HR experience, we also need finance experience,
Yeah.
because things, you know, they ripple out and they have meanings
Yep.
beyond just this one classification.
Yep.
And, you know, the bylaw might not be the right place to put it, but certainly we should have somewhere in our heads that a strong personnel board has this kind of expertise as
Well, you
well.
know, what you're raising for me is he brought up on several occasions that it used to be that somebody from the finance committee used to sit in on the personnel board meetings.
Yes, but what happened next? I don't know.
Right.
Did that individual go back to the FinCom and say, this is what I'm hearing, what do you think? And ask for insight there to go back to the personnel board, or was it all a one-way street?
depends how you interpret you use this checklist.
Yeah,
There's a line in there for the FinCom representative.
Yeah,
If it,
but is it a volunteer position or is it a town staff
is
position?
it John Harris or is it,
Yeah, or representative thereof.
you know,
I mean, that's the question on the checklist. Has any proposed change that has a monetary value been sent to and signed off by the FinCom prior to submission to the Personnel
Yeah.
Board?
so would you mind if we say on this one, see checklist?
You change anything you want. This was just a first
No, I don't want to
stab.
change it. I want to add to it.
So
Just so that,
Refer to the appendix again.
yeah,
refer to checklist.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll change it.
you know, in the old days, the town had just, you know, a plenitude of volunteers, and anyone with goodwill could serve well. Sorry, I see people could serve well and meaningfully, but nowadays we need, many committees need a particular expertise in addition to goodwill. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to know how to
Run an HR department.
or, you know, a broadband.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm looking at these people here, they have a lot of experiences.
Right.
And maybe they're not directly used in any particular committee, but certainly expertise helps.
Or knowing where it resides.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we go to the next one.
No changes to 10, 5, 6. And now I'm at
We're at 10-6.
6. We're at 10, 6.
It is recommended that the added compensation based on longevity be revisited. The monetary amounts are minuscule in today's world and have minimal effect as any incentive for employees to remain in the employee of the town.
So what other biddies can we hit?
Yeah, and I think that's, I think we ought to look at whether or not it needs to be a monetary one, whether it's something other than that, like,
Sure.
one of the comments in the survey was about there used to be free membership in Beatty Center
Maybe not free, but
or discounted or whatever,
the
but.
free was over 80.
Okay.
I'm working on it. They took it away.
I
They
got a
took
ways
it
to
away.
go.
Not going anywhere. near it. Nope.
But yes, that's
But,
a biddy.
it's-
That would be really.
That's the kind of thing that the personnel board could
That
help.
could be in the conclusion.
Yes.
I was just addressing strictly the longevity pay. I believe, and I might be wrong, I believe the police department is $2,400.
That's
Where we're at for top and it's 600 here. Now, I know it's a union and it's negotiated and they might have traded off something else, but
Well, they
there's
did.
there's disparity.
They should all be the same.
Well, they don't have to be the same, but they have to be valued
Yeah,
by
Okay.
whoever.
this,
Okay.
this to me is a disincentive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very
Good
polite.
call. This is excellent. Okay, I'm up to 11. Sick leave.
And so, under 11.2,
Yes.
it is recommended the town manager, human resources department, and employees work together to see if a form of sick bank is needed, wanted, and or feasible. Yeah,
Check it out. And that, of course, if you step back, then you say, uh-huh. There has to be a way for them to work together. So we have to build on all of the different ways that these folks are going to work together. So it's,
If you follow my model of when I was looking for my compressor manual.
Yeah, can we see this, Auntie?
And yes, this is the actual, I brought it with me, so if someone accuses me of making it up. It's got, that really has coffee stains on it.
yeah, so we
That
have,
is just hysterical.
look at that, coffee stains and all, 1987. I like this. Now, your memo was written,
Pretty simple, pretty straightforward.
I can't read your date.
Well,
Police?
that's Adele Langevin wrote that was the policy
this
she
one.
wrote. Yes,
Oh, that's her policy.
that's her policy that
Okay.
everybody
And
said
then your memo,
is that I sent out.
okay.
It's amazing
This
what
is
you,
cool.
it's amazing what you find with the directions for your
Well,
compressor.
I'm hoping that the idea is we go back.
so here's something, 12.1.
Oh, 1 second.
This was one of the ones that I had a little bit of passion about. There is no holiday on here for either any other religion other than Christmas. And given that we have a new DEI commission, I would like to see us highlight the fact that should be some sensitivity about that.
Might I suggest that I make my little appendix additions, ship this to you
Okay,
and you,
okay.
I didn't go there because I didn't, we hadn't gone there yet.
Well, I had it in my matrix,
Okay.
but that was a long time ago.
I've seen that, I
But the
think.
matrix is in here. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yes.
so You're not asking for anything specific. You're
Not-
asking for
Just a
Um,
sensitivity
sensitivity,
and
rather-
maybe looking at, either a floating holiday or something.
So you're not even saying,
Which-
take the number of holidays that we have granted and award them to each employee to be used on whichever day of the year he
I
or she
don't know, it
wants.
could be.
That would be a good way to do it.
Because then it's up to the employee and the department head or the division. Is it a division head? Or are you saying just add one, or are you saying award to the employee himself or herself the ability to use those?
Consider floating holiday,
I like it.
period.
Well, believe it, or I haven't really read it, but this is the agenda for the last personnel meeting that was before the most recent canceled one.
Mhm.
This is the one I was referring to where there are changes to the comp schedules well after the town meeting date, but there's a
Yeah,
whole section
yes.
in this about holidays.
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh, okay.
yeah, there was some.
Yeah, so
Yeah, they added Juneteenth because that was not there before.
right.
Mhm.
And what was the other thing? There were two.
This is the.
We changed
that's the beginning of
bereavement.
it, yeah.
Yeah, they extended the definition of family
In
Yes.
at
bereavement.
town meeting. Yeah,
But this is what's before the board right now.
okay.
This is not
Yeah.
before town meeting, it's before the,
I'll take a look.
The personnel board?
But it's your
Those are the-
understanding that it'll go from personnel board to consideration at town meeting or personnel board, the end.
my take is personnel, the end.
So where's Juneteenth in all of this?
That was
We
town
had-
meeting.
we had
We've already
to go-
voted.
Town meeting did that, but now we're amending things that we shouldn't be amending.
Yeah.
should've-
That's not where they should be going.
Well, to quote Bruce Button, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I'm just the facts, man.
Well, and
Thanks, we don't like
what
doing
what I
facts.
wrote was, see policies amended at 2016 town meeting. Policy 11.21 issued in 92 about what constitutes family. Now must be rescinded, but it hasn't.
It hasn't been.
That's part of the problem.
And
It
then
is.
it's reflected in the personal policies and procedures as well. There are
Yes.
little notes in it that say, rescinded at X.
This is the cleaning out the basement we need to do.
Bring Paul, he knows how to do basements. He can do
Get a dumpster.
it. Okay,
Yeah,
we're good. So did you have a word about holidays and bereavements? and
I didn't because I didn't really,
We hadn't reached our joint conclusions.
no.
So this.
well, town meeting voted to replace all bylaw where there is increase in days and expansion of relationship descriptions of family. That's section 14.
But that's not holidays.
No.
Specific.
Leave.
I didn't have any other comments on anything. I think they're just pretty stock items. And we didn't have any changes.
Right, and the rest of it is pretty stock items.
Yes.
Well, we have,
And there are some policies that
Oh, I
were
didn't-
added to the bylaws
yeah,
that have, and the bylaws should refer to these policies. I mean, that should be kind of a blanket statement about bylaws needing to refer to updated practices that are called policies. And then the question is, should the bylaw be made a policy and dropped from the list of bylaws
but that takes consideration
of
of,
town council?
well, yeah, you just
Yeah.
can't do it.
Right.
You have to,
No, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying ideally, to level the playing field of confusion.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
I'm looking at our agenda.
Yep.
We are right now open discussion on draft recommendations,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And we have to choose which iteration of yours. I believe May 23rd was in the packet, 5/23.
Is it that one?
No, mine starts
Yeah,
with,
this is the one I have.
okay.
See, I don't,
We had one system only.
let me put it on my action list to send everybody out.
Okay.
the last
may I see
version.
that for a second, Bruce?
Sure.
The one that's,
If you send it through Aaron, that way we should all get it.
Is that the melded one?
it is, this is, this is
It begins with
our process of summary. I retract,
June 28th.
I
Thank
retract,
you.
let's go back to this being the introduction.
Okay,
Don't take my copy.
Don't ask me,
Keep it.
it's that one.
Hmm.
so you didn't want to make any more changes? Because that was only my first cut, Paul. I was waiting for you to
I,
get
I,
back to me and say, it works, it doesn't work.
I'm ready. to
I
wait.
thought I could have communicated back to you. I didn't, my mind's thinking you sent it to everybody.
I did. No,
Just to me.
I did it only to you
I apologize for that.
because
No,
it was you and I working on it together to get just that part done. Okay,
I'm
that's fine.
perfectly happy with it.
We're all
Let me,
moving forward.
I'm,
Okay,
nice try.
so we got that.
Okay.
Yay. Yeah. You want to take a 5-minute break?
Oh, no. Oh,
No, you want to,
no,
to
I
roll.
wanna get it
Okay.
done. Now that we have agreed that our process of summary, June 28th is the intro conclusion stuff, then I do want to work on that, but maybe we can work on it next week. I do, however, want,
Oh, yeah,
It is
and there was a newer version I sent you after that.
oh, no.
It had a couple of changes in it because of your comments.
you want this back?
And this is the
You can
draft
always send it to
matrix
me.
at the end.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, who did I get this from? This is.
I don't know.
did
I
you-
just-
Did you hand this to me?
No, I did.
Let me see.
You did. I'm sure it's in one of my emails, but
That's June 28th.
Yes.
That's the one.
yes.
I don't have a June 28th one in my email. I don't. Just take it, scan it, send it to me. You have it.
All right, this is the 6/28.
Okay,
We'll talk
and
about this one, right?
this is June
Okay,
28th.
I'll send this to you.
Oh, yeah,
Process of some,
right, and I'm not sending it out again.
yes, and then we're gonna mark it up.
Okay,
Okay, but this one,
yeah.
this
This
one
was
without
an,
adjectives and adverbs is meaty.
and it also had some things in it that I wanted to change.
The last thing in your packet.
It was the last document. And, I just, again, I'm trying to do layouts that look a little different from, strict text. This was a reviewing of authority roles and administration, their authority and roles. And what I had tried to do was, what is current, what's proposed, what's the reason, and what are the next steps?
Mhm.
And one of the things I had changed on the first page, one of 3, was under the first one, the second bullet, it says engage a consultant. I changed it to engage a town council.
Thank you. I get prickly when people want to
Yeah.
start engaging consultants.
And then under the personnel board charge,
Mhm.
the last bullet, it says determine how additional responsibilities will be set forth. I had, the last via bylaw voted at town meeting or shifting bylaw to policy.
Oh, you added.
I've added that.
And then that brings up my, and again, to go to council, I'm sure.
Yeah,
How can we do that? How do you move bylaw to policy? Remember 1,000 years ago, when we needed to change the fee schedule for fines?
Mhm.
That ended up at town meeting.
Mhm.
And it was
Well-
in a bylaw and it went into a
it
policy.
may be that is part of a charter change.
Ouch.
Doesn't the
Yeah.
charter have to go before the legislature?
I don't know.
I thought if you
Yeah,
change
it
the
does.
charter, it has
I'm
to go
quite
before the
sure it does.
legislature, yeah.
I think it's a
I
town
bet
meeting
it
vote and
does.
then it has to go to the legislature.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll put it in
But
there.
It's
but
a possible, somebody else has to grapple with it,
Yeah.
but this,
Why can't this, to me, seems like a great appendix for a more detailed,
Right.
you
all
know,
crunched
Okay.
together.
analysis of where you're
Yeah.
coming up with McCone's simple.
Okay, okay.
But remember,
Comments.
if take your heads way back to January. Claude tried to give us
He did.
a
He was
matrix. It was not this detail.
Right.
It
Right.
was, town manager, personnel board, not human resources, town meeting.
Yeah,
It wasn't nearly this meaty,
No.
but this
Right.
is what we
well,
need.
trying to put it all together in a different way.
Yes, but I think it should be included
Yes.
in the work.
Yeah. And then on page 2,
Uh-huh.
where it says town charter at the top. What have I got here?
I have wage and salary at the top.
Okay, page is salary, wage is salary, where is that?
I don't have it in my 3 pages.
Okay.
Came on Friday.
1, 2,
Okay. Yeah.
on the wage and salary, the only thing I added under the second proposals is the PPPs should go into an employee document.
I like that.
And so I added that
Okay.
as a dot.
And I think along the line of this committee meeting over the past year or so, we had taken a stand in support of an employee manual.
Absolutely.
I couldn't give you where in the minutes
Yeah, we
right
did.
this minute, but I remember it.
And
Why do we not have one? Because people don't want to follow it? I didn't say that.
say that, what'd you say?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna ask them.
I said, why do we not have one? Because people don't want to follow it?
I think people would love to follow it. They
Good.
need to know what their job is, what's expected of them. And their bosses need to know what they're responsible for.
That was-
You
that
know,
was
it's
sick.
awfully hard to manage people if you don't know.
I think the latter was, you
I
don't.
think there's some answers to the thought process in the survey.
Yeah,
And we learned from the survey that it's not a given that every employee is an internet user.
too true.
Yeah,
And
Yep.
that needs to be thought through with respect to paper copies.
Yep.
You know, why isn't an employee handbook something you can go pick up and have in front of you and read?
Agreed. And put it down and come back later and read some more.
Right, and when you're hired, you're given, along with the sexual harassment policy and other things that you have to sign, you're given a copy of the.
Should be, you're thinking, should be.
At least have a choice
Yeah.
to get one.
So you can read it over without
and then the last
a computer.
change I made is on the last page. Under the bullets of proposals,
Uh-huh.
instead of engage consultant, engage a task force to assist the personnel board in identifying current best practices.
Love it.
Good job.
Yeah, it is a really good job of,
This is
Yeah.
meaty and,
All right,
and where are we gonna put this? Is this gonna be at the very top of the appendix list? Even before the charge?
or
Or is it gonna
last.
be last, or is it gonna be last thing in the report? Where can we, this is,
I think the report is the way
I'd like it in the
I'd
report.
like it in the report as well.
It's fine. I mean, I think some of this stuff, I mean, this isn't gonna go over well, but I would have paper bound part one and paper bound part two, and I would deliver 2 documents to the select board in person. Because the
Short
internet,
version and long.
well,
No.
the attachments
The attachments.
in the second one, because people are not gonna,
The last long-range plan, it was, part one, part two, part three. They were
Yikes.
all huge.
yeah, because I personally believe people are not gonna go on the internet and dig this stuff out. That's just my opinion from what I see going on,
Mhm.
you know.
I agree.
People like this.
Any additions or corrections to this document, please email me and I will add them.
You're going to reissue?
Yes,
Okay,
Right.
this is good.
That's great.
Yeah, get a reissue of everything where it stands today, what we're working on.
Yeah, I'll redo my stuff.
I do have a follow-up question, and I'm sorry
Yeah.
to hit you with
no,
this.
that's right.
Under personnel board charge.
Yep.
Task force had a charge. The personnel board had the administrative code from 1985.
So you
And
notice I put it in
bylaws.
quotes.
yeah, so you have a quote. If somebody is looking for the charge of personnel, what,
You mean the one that we operate under?
no, personnel board, not us.
The
Okay.
charter from 1955,
Okay,
you're talking about.
The 1955 isn't as extensive as Anita's 1985 take.
right.
So I think one thing that's important to me is fussy, but I'm a nitpicker.
That's good. That's what we need.
1985 is sitting out there on a limb, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
So is it driving their job or is it put away? And they only look
It
at
should,
bylaws. We
it
need
it
to,
should be in the appendices as somebody's job.
but we have to,
We can reference it in.
we need to make
I
sure
know.
what is the driving force of this committee? Not
Did-
us, of the
They-
personnel board.
Well, they should
If-
follow
If they're pressed, will they turn to 1985 or will they turn to bylaws? Because the bylaws don't speak to, overarching.
that.
They talk meaty ways about specific topics. If X comes to the attention of the personnel board, they shall follow the bylaw.
Well, it sounds to me like what we're talking about is a reconciliation between bylaw, charge, 85 PPPs, everything, so that there is no confusion about what is directing the personnel board.
And that's not our job,
No, that's not,
but that's something we would expect the personnel board to be doing.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Or or whoever they report to in the town to make sure they're doing it.
It could absolutely be that the town manager instigates, bad word, sorry. Or the board of selectmen undertakes
yeah.
much better word,
Instant.
to do this.
Yeah.
Because I think we're looking forward to that time in the future when the personnel board is re-energized, strengthened. The personnel board, in my head, too fancy, I know, represents the town to employees. But it also represents employees to the town, you
Yeah.
know? That's our point of contact.
Yep.
So we have to make sure it's really healthy and respectful. Um, I need to make sure that people can't fall into traps. You know, it's sort of like, you know, giving somebody a tool of whatever variety and saying, welcome aboard, go do your job, without giving them any expectations about what to do, how to do, what are the goals, you know, that. So if we say that to the personnel board, welcome aboard, shake the hand, and they go to their first meeting with nothing,
Yep.
you know, August. Finance committee, every blessed August. Tony does
His orientation.
the orientation and every finance committee member goes, not just the newbies.
Right.
Because they need to know what's new and unusual in the law, what the expectations are. And I, you know, I really feel bad for the folks who come with a big smile on their face and willing to do a job, but nobody gets around to telling them what the job is.
I think it was a different era with Tony because he was amazing.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it,
And he should-
my
and it shouldn't be.
opinion on that is that much of this is going to depend on how seriously someone takes this report, how seriously they take the structure in town. If, when we're done with these hundreds of hours of work and enough paper to kill 6 trees,
This isn't even all of it.
10
No.
trees.
and it just gets tossed,
So we need to,
that would be very disappointing. But I would think in the larger scheme of select persons and town managers, and their job is oversight.
Yes.
That's their role in this whole, in the scheme of things. So one of their roles is oversight. This will, in my opinion, will rise or fall on the oversight.
well, I think when we wrap this thing up, we need to put in the conclusion, point A, we recommend that the select board deal with this within 6 months. Item B, we recommend it go on the town manager's action list to be done in 3 months. Go down the list and assign
Right, we talked about that
where
last
we
time.
think it should go.
I personally think the personnel board should have input into the human resources director.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
if they asked the town, if they asked SMT to help evaluate the town manager, which they've done last year,
yeah.
or last year, I think it should be, that's my opinion, I think the personnel board should have some input into the evaluation of the personnel director.
And that's not done already? I mean, different boards and committees do have input into the evaluation of the staff.
Yeah, I don't think it's done at all. I've never heard,
Well-
that didn't come up.
I think it should, I think it
You
should,
know,
I think it should be. And I hope someone's hearing this.
And they should, yeah.
That-
and they
I'd be
should.
surprised if it wasn't. I know it exists for some staff and committees. I don't know that it exists for every, but it would be very helpful. And if they were given a voice and even, not a tutorial, but even some thoughts on the areas to consider in making their comments. Good, yes.
So
It might be an interesting question to ask. When was the last time we did performance evaluations? How many, and I believe that it will be told us to us in years.
well, it's the town manager's job, right?
Yes. And then it goes down. The play, I don't believe we do performance evaluations and haven't in some years.
I'm guessing since probably 2016, we haven't done them.
I don't know, but I know we're not doing them.
Well,
We're not doing
it's
them.
interesting because, you know, long ago.
That's what I'm told. And I could be wrong. Someone can jump in and ask.
Dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The select board reviewed, and I believe they do today, the town manager. And the town manager of the time Chris Whalen, said it was important for him to be evaluated because then he had more credibility doing that same evaluation for his employees.
Right,
You know, it just closes the
do
loop.
as the leader does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we may have gone through an era where the person in Wayland's seat didn't really think that was a good idea. I'm just guessing.
That could be.
I'm just
And
guessing.
maybe that's Kerry feels differently about that, but I don't, as a supervisor, which I was most of my career, I don't know how you initiate any kind of discipline if you don't have a track record.
You know,
How do you do progressive discipline when you don't have?
Or
Performance
progressive
of-
development. for that matter.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent.
All right.
You're
Let
going
me
to reissue
just
that.
summarize. I'm going to do a send out of the last version, June 28th of the introduction and the overarching thing to come before what Paul has put together. And I'm also going to send out this again
Uh-huh.
with the changes that I made. Paul and Bruce are going to work on a closing and send that out before we meet with the personnel board, I would assume.
No, I think we should wait
yeah,
because the conclusion might include things from the personnel board.
Well, that's true, because our final recommendation will include things from the public
I think
hearing.
that's the last thing we
Okay.
need to do, is the
I
conclusion.
mean,
Right.
we can do a draft of what we think we want to say and just sit on it.
Right.
Until after that meeting.
Right.
All right, and then I guess you and I would put together an agenda for the joint meeting.
Are we posting for the personnel board or are they
Yes.
posting themselves?
I think they've already been posted. I asked Aaron to make sure that they were posted and I let Bill know that.
Okay.
So what is the purpose of meeting with them? Are we going to
Bring them up to speed.
tell them we think they haven't been doing a good job? I mean, that's basically what the
No.
report says.
No,
That's what the report says. They haven't
they're
been,
going to see what we're going to be reporting back to the select board. And it's an opportunity for them to be a part of what moving forward is all about. Whatever that is.
I have
I don't,
a stinky question, and that is, what happens if we have our meeting and we say, "Whoop, this is whatever it is, and they come back with, we disagree. This is wrong, something's inappropriate, it'll never fly. How do we reference that in our report? If this
Do a
meeting-
minority report.
I hate minority report. Yeah, I mean, if we're having a public hearing
Mhm.
and we hear things that are uncomfortable, we need to reference that, you know, public hearing indicated ABC topics. We don't have, I don't believe, I'll have to do some research. I don't believe we have to say by name and address. I think it's simply that we learned these things.
I think we can put in whatever we want.
our report,
It's our report. I mean, we've listened to
tons
lot
of
of
people.
hours and hours and hours of input from employees, from other people, from stakeholders and all of these things. We're not referencing. And necessarily, we're taking it in the aggregate and using our brains and coming up with this. So, you know, in defense of the personnel board, they're only as good as what they're given.
Oh, absolutely.
So I hope they understand that it's not any negative comments about the personnel board, at least
The persons.
the persons themselves. That's not
Right.
where we're
It's not
going.
the
It's the
person.
fact that
It's a
we're,
process,
it's the process
not
and
working.
I'd like to keep it upbeat
Me
with the
too.
personnel board that,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, we want to be your friend.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't been given a Tony training session, is what they're supposed to do. You know,
They're only as good as what they're
Yeah.
given.
and apparently, well, whatever.
so should we see if anybody else has some comments they want to make?
Sure.
Are we there already? That's
Oh, yeah.
wonderful.
Anybody have any comments?
Yes.
I
I
see
see
one hand. Ned, and it looks like somebody else, but I can't see.
Did Mark raise his hand? I know I saw Ned, but don't anybody
just put their
sign
hand up.
off until at the very end, somebody on your side of the camera gives me a list of people who are there, because we can't see those people.
That's to Chris.
This is not to sign off, okay. No, you have to do it in real time before they go away.
Oh, they
Hi,
have-
Ruth, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Yes,
Okay, great. So Terry Ackerman had her hand raised, and then we also have Carlin Reed and then Perry, although,
Carmen is here too, okay.
and in terms of people who's in the room right now, it's Terry Ackerman, Carlin Reed, Ned Perry, Anita Techley, and Mark
Thank you.
Howell.
And Mark, okay. And the hand raised was Terry?
We've got a few hands raised right now, but I think Terry was the first to the punch.
All right, so I see Terry, Carlin, and Mark. Okay,
Yeah, and Ned had his hand raised too,
okay, so.
in real person.
Real person. Okay, over to you.
All right, I don't know what the sequence was. Mark, why don't we start up? I'm just gonna take it from the top left, go across and work. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I think Terry really was first, so I'm going to
Okay,
defer to her.
Terry. All
It
right.
doesn't matter. It's whoever you want can go first. All right, I'll go first. My questions are pretty easy. They're about scheduling. Can you hear me okay?
What?
Yes,
Lean back just a little bit, not so close to the mic. Okay, try again.
I have some questions about scheduling.
Yeah.
Schedule, okay.
Right, okay. So it sounds like you have a series of 3 meetings. The first one is July 25th, a joint meeting with the Personnel Board. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And the second meeting is the one I'm confused about. And then the third one is you're going to come to a select board meeting with the final report. Is that right?
yes.
Yes,
Great. Okay, so the second meeting sounds like you're calling it a public hearing. You're going to invite the public and employees. I'm wondering, this is something I learned recently at a different committee. There's a difference between public hearing and public forum.
What was the last word?
difference between public,
Public forum.
Public forum.
Ah,
When I was on the capital planning task force, I was calling it a public hearing, but that's not correct. That wasn't correct. That meant you have to advertise legally in a newspaper 2 weeks ahead, and there's, a butters usually, and I think what you want is a public forum.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
Okay,
okay,
That's
good
good.
point.
Plus, it's not all, it's primarily non-residents, Terry. You're absolutely right. If most of the employees are not residents,
yep.
so forum.
Well, it's for both. And so you don't have a date for that one yet. Is that
that's correct.
okay? Okay, thanks very much.
But before you all go away, it'd be nice to get an opinion from you all about the forum. We today talked about it being a daytime meeting. Does that meet your needs? I see nods and twitches. Okay. So daytime would be adequate for our peeps.
Mark,
Hi, thanks for having a meeting. It's good to see you all. I kind of suspected Terry was going to make the forum versus hearing thing, and I ran into the same thing running the broadband task force, and so I wanted to let her get that comment in. I agree, it makes sense to call it a forum. I also agree with the idea of scheduling it at a time that's convenient for employees to attend. I have some questions about sort of where you think the work winds up. I appreciate the idea of creating a report with recommendations. I think specifically the recommendations probably fall into three categories. One are specific edits to the bylaw, which eventually I think becomes an article at town meeting. And I'm wondering whether you're thinking that the task force becomes sort of the sponsor of that article, or through the select board as the sponsor of that article and stays in place doing it. Obviously, if you had strong support or alignment with the personnel board, that could also be a possible option there. But I think, Ruth did raise, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that, the current members of the personnel board may or may not agree with your specific formulation of what the bylaw should contain. And so that's a, piece of sort of maneuvering that I think is worth it to think about. I also think that it makes sense to follow the model that was done with the fee schedules for things like the holidays. I would suggest, and I haven't seen your document in detail, so maybe you already covered this, that something like the holiday schedule holidays become a schedule which has a procedure for updating it, maybe the same procedure as any other policy, which reads something like drafted by HR and the town manager, presented to the personnel board for approval and being finalized, maybe even has to go up to the select board, but something short of town meeting action that does involve an actual citizen approval would seem to me to streamline what's likely to happen. When the federal government changes its holidays, or the state, you don't really want to have town meeting have to be engaged in that, at least in my personal opinion. And there may be other things that fit into that as well. We referenced the definition of families. And I think the third area, besides those kinds of procedural improvements and the bylaw, is making a specific recommendation as to what the charge should be. I think we are all dissatisfied with the 1985 document. It's been variously called a charge and not a charge because it doesn't specifically have any real evidence that the select board ever presented it to the personnel board as a charge. I think it would make sense for this task force to generate a proposal for a charge that the select board could obviously modify and therefore approve. And of course, that doesn't really need to wait for town meeting. That could go at any time. So those are some of my thoughts based on where you are. I appreciate how challenging this work is, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Carla, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. This goes to how the audience is going to participate in your July 5 joint meeting with the Personnel Board, as well as your August public forum. Ruth, in particular, please do check with Karitara, the town clerk, about whether the audience is going to be able to use the Zoom function after July 14th. I've been in contact with them, and it sounds like we're going to revert to the former approach, which means the audience has to show up in person. Do clarify that, find out what's the best way, and then also think, if you can do Zoom for the audience, whether you want to do it in a webinar format or in this standard type format. Okay, do you know what I mean by webinar format?
Yep.
Okay, the webinar format is not really favored by a lot of audience members, but it makes it easier to handle if you have 100 or more participants, which you might if you have town employees participating. It's one where the audience can't see each other, so the audience doesn't know who else is there, but the people who are the main speakers, they will be able to see who's around. So it's a way of handling it. So that's all. That was just my question about how the audience is going to participate. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you.
Great. Anita?
Just a couple of things. My understanding is last Thursday, the state legislature approved the extension of the remote meetings until December of 2023. Terry's saying no. I read something with the clerk saying it passed the Senate on Tuesday and it was going to the House on Thursday. They anticipated
I
it was going to
heard.
pass. Did that not happen?
Well, I got something from the clerk today, right before I came, saying, please see the message below.
Well, it was scheduled to disband as of like next week, but the state legislature with a lot of lobbying, my understanding is they approved it Thursday. Maybe the governor hasn't signed it yet, but
It's not approved according to what the town clerk says.
Right, the House approved a mandated hybrid meeting, and the Senate hasn't approved anything yet. So I think stay tuned, it's gonna keep changing. Last time, they finally figured it out 48 hours after the deadline. So keep-
Call it as you
Okay.
see it.
Some state legislature reported differently on Thursday, so I will follow up on that, but
Thank
it's very
Yeah,
possible that,
We're gonna keep track of it too.
yeah, so it's obviously changing, but I mean, there was a big to-do among clerks that it was happening on Thursday. Second, the holidays, it's a state list. We have one more that's on the state list being the day after Thanksgiving. That is not a state holiday, but there is, the otherwise, whenever the state or federal list changes, Concord tends to change its list. I fully, and I had suggested this to the HR director recently, I fully support, as many communities are heading toward, allowing employees to have some flex time. We now, they can use personal time for anything they want, but why not put personal, bereavement, and vacation all in one lump sum that they can use for whatever reason, as long as they schedule it in advance. Maybe not put holidays there, because the offices by law have to be closed on legal holidays. In any event, and I think that was somewhat supported in the survey that was done with employees. I'd have to look at that again. The 1985 document, it's now 37 years old. No question, it's out of date. But it was followed up and it was considered a charge. I think it was Mark that said it was never approved. It was approved, and it was considered the charge back in, for the first 25 years. Maybe in recent years, it was ignored. I mean, there was some people that didn't even know it existed. But, and there's no question we need a charge, but I think there has been a departure in recent years. Last thing that there were, I think I was thinking this when Paul was going through the list. Over the years, and then maybe the past 10 years, I think with good reason, a lot of the items that were in the bylaw have been moved to PPPs. The problem with that is they've been moved piecemeal, and so they've never been consolidated. They're hard for employees to find. There's like 3 different documents that might make up how you calculate your vacation leave. So you have to have all these pieces of paper, and it would be, going back to that idea of a handbook or some kind of a document employees can have, where this would all be consolidated. It doesn't have to all be in the bylaw, but somehow the process needs to be in the bylaw, how these can be amended. They don't all have to go to town meeting. Someone had asked earlier, what has to go to town meeting? The bylaw has to go to town meeting. So any bylaw amendments have to go to town meeting. This personnel bylaw is the one bylaw that doesn't have to go to the Attorney General. So it's a fairly straightforward process. What they've been doing now, the past couple of months, I have not been following. So whether they're violating the bylaw or not, I don't know. But and I guess lastly, I'm now got most of my restrictions released. I'm now health-wise, I'm doing better. So I'm still available and willing to volunteer to help pull a draft document together. So that offer is still there. Just
Don't go away.
you need to ask. No, I mean, I've unfortunately, I've done a lot of these over the years, and it's not that tedious a task for me. So I'm more than happy to help pull it together. I'm cringing here. Well, it looked like you've got several versions. I have not seen the physical documents, and I, maybe can get those from Aaron, but that would be helpful if I were going to do something like that. But I'm more than happy. I've worked on a lot of these over the years for Concord and elsewhere, so it's not it's something I enjoy doing. So and I'm willing to volunteer to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ned, how about you?
I think for your meeting with the employees, you need to have something succinct, like a one pager. Maybe even, when you meet with the personnel board, and keep in mind, I know this is a public meeting here, so people were going to hear me, but I have nothing to lose. It wasn't that long ago that the personnel board and HR director said publicly they saw no future role for the personnel board. So, so you can't go into that meeting cold. They have since perhaps reconsidered that because they're meeting more frequently, but it's just the past couple of years they were meeting once or twice a year and really had no functional role. So that perhaps has changed, but you need to go in with that mindset.
Thank you.
Good points.
Ned,
Thank you very much. Ned Perry, 362 Bedford Street. I do believe that your activities over the last 6 months have stimulated the personnel board into action. I congratulate the chair of the personnel board in taking interest into the classification compensation plan and asking for input into that. And I believe the personnel board is getting back on track, but your recommendations to the select board, I think, are instrumental and very key for the community to try and raise Concord as a better municipal employer than we have been for the last 10 years or so. I second Anita's position that the charge for the personnel board is the 1985 document. As a member of the Charter Review Task Force several years ago, we looked at all the charges to all the committees in our town charter, and we accepted the 1985 charge as the charge to the personnel board, and we strongly recommended to the select board at that time that they revise all the personnel, all the charges for the standing committees on a regular basis, on a 5 to 10 year basis. And of course, this hasn't been done for the personnel board. So I hope Ms. Ackerman will take back to the select board the idea that maybe the personnel board's charge should be reviewed, and hopefully you will have input into that as a task force. Finally, and this is an issue that I ran into in my next to the last year of town moderator, and perhaps was one of the reasons I decided that 10 years was enough. When you are looking at the personnel bylaw to update it, take into account that in our last town meeting on the consent calendar were changes to the holidays, the vacation leave, and the bereavement leave. And so you shouldn't be editing an old, outdated personnel bylaw, but you should be updating the current personnel bylaw that was updated as recently as this last town meeting.
yeah,
And that does have the Juneteenth Independence Day in the listing. And it does include some changes to the bereavement leave, maybe not all that Anita would recommend, but please update a current item rather than an outdated one. Thank you for all you're doing. You've been a terrific task force. There's work to be done, but I think the personnel board looks forward to meeting with you, from what I understand from at least one member. And I trust that the select board that appointed you will welcome your report when you get it done. Thank you very much for all you're doing.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ned.
Any other comments?
I see no hands raised.
Yeah, I see no other comments. Anything else you want to say? Ready?
No.
Move we adjourn.
That motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for your participation.
This was good.